Yeah, so this is the Colorado story. We have a bit of this to go into today if you guys are interested.
Mhm.
It's not one of our main stories, but we can certainly do it. Democracy, vote for who you want to win. Democrats, remove who they worry will win. And that has happened in Colorado. In fact, you know, let's go on to that now, because there's a little thing I can show you. It doesn't take very long, but it's good
happening
stuff,
in California as well, actually.
Yeah. I have no doubt that it is. Yeah, that California would be the first place I guess they would do this. We talked about this last stream, so I said a lot of the things I wanted to say already. There it is. Thank you, Meat Bun.
There it is.
But this little update here, this is admirable, and it enters a sort of new phase of this conflict.
They have just tried to bar President Trump from the Colorado ballot using an unconstitutional maneuver that is a bastardization of the 14th Amendment to our U.S. Constitution. This was a provision, Section 3, that was designed to bar Confederate members, people who switched to the Confederacy, from actually being able to serve. That's very different than what's at issue here, to say the least. This is a hollowed out husk of what the country was built on. The basic principle that we, the people, select our leadership, not the unelected elite class in the back of palace halls. That's old world Europe, not the United States. That's why I'm making a pledge today that I will withdraw. I pledge to withdraw from the Colorado GOP primary ballot unless and until Trump's name is restored. And I demand that Ron DeSantis and Chris Christie and Nikki Haley do the same thing, or else these Republicans are simply complicit in this unconstitutional attack on the way we conduct our constitutional republic.
Honestly, highly based.
Based Vivek.
Very. Good politicking. I think Vivek Ramsey.
He's very good.
He's angling very hard for the BP.
Yes.
Yes, this is tactically wise, probably. But I don't think he's being dishonest. I think this is how he really is.
I certainly hope so. Vivek has a lot in common with Trump in terms of his background, where I want to trust Vivek.
Yeah.
I don't because I don't trust anybody. Right.
But
I don't trust anybody.
He's not white.
I'm very glad that he's in the race, because at the very least he's pushing the window in the right direction, because he's arguably more based than Trump is.
Before didn't work well.
He's a bit of an enigma to me, because he is somebody who says some of the right things, but also has some of the weird indicators. He's kind of a libertarian, which is fine, and he is kind of pushing the conversation about where it can go. But I also think he's a little bit of a cul-de-sac, and there's only so much you can say.
Well,
but that's kind of by the way.
I'm not sure about that. If you've seen him in the GOP debates, he was absolutely pounding on exactly the issues that are sort of near the tip of the spear, where the others were just like Nikki Haley and Chris Christie are just like fat in more ways than one. They're very old school rhinos. Ron DeSantis is the sort of halfway between rhino and MAGA safe option right now, and I hate that I have to say that. Vivek is even more MAGA than MAGA. He's really up there. Like he's the only prominent person in the GOP party I think would actually fit in with cabal and our kind of communities where we talk about the same kinds of issues and to the same kind of extent. So that's very good. But of course there are reasons to be cautious. He has a history which, by some metrics, is some like association with leftist ideas and with leftist institutions, but so does Trump. It's not conclusive, and Trump arguably does as well. Yeah, so I would like to be able to trust him, but for now, it's keep an eye on him. But he's not going to be the nominee. But maybe he'd make a good VP, or maybe he'd make a good nominee next time.
What I think is interesting is that, and another reason why I like Vivek is that he doesn't appear to be actually vying to be president. He is just selling himself for 2028.
It's a branding thing.
He is not signing. He is not selling himself for 2024. He's selling himself for 2028, and that makes him very rare, because a lot of the other, like DeSantis, is like, no, I have to be president. He is being deferential to Trump. Knows that Trump obviously is going to be the nominee, and he's aligning himself with Trump. I think in an honest and genuine way, not just sycophantically. I hope that's true. That's how it comes off, though.
My opinion of DeSantis is he was pushed into it by other forces, because I don't think he really wants to be president. Because if you look at the money that was backing him, because the amount of money that was burned by backing him against Trump, that has just mysteriously gone to Nikki Haley, it's just like, you are the puppet vessel for this particular moment in time, and now it's just like nuke. It didn't work. It just immediately plugged into Nikki Haley, and you can see the media just shifting away from him into Nikki Haley. And I'm like,
DeSantis has he was the early kind of front runner, and he's really screwed the pooch, and everyone who got on the DeSantis train now looks terrible. A lot of that stuff has not aged well.
We were we were saying, I'm sure you guys heard this or were saying the same thing possibly before he ran. We were saying, please don't run. You are ideal exactly where you are in Florida, and you're viewed as Trump's top man. If you run, it will be perceived as betraying him.
I'm Trump's top guy.
Yeah, trying to run against him.
Trump needs
and he could have not run and possibly been VP, but I prefer him in Florida, to be honest. And he's done great in Florida. You see him in the debate against Newsom. He was great against Newsom.
Oh, it was fantastic.
He's certainly capable. He just should not have gone into the presidential race.
You know what?
He ran 100%. A tremendously bad campaign. The call with Elon, for example, I mean, that was not entirely Ron's fault, but it was still something that Ron could have chosen not to go to. And his campaign's been generally pretty awful. It's
exactly.
oddly awful, worse than I know he can do. So it's even a little suspicious, but it's possible that he was, as you say, he's been pushed into it by sort of very indirect, but ultimately controlling forces, establishment forces that wanted him to confront Trump. But now, because it hasn't worked clearly, and he's dropping below Vivek and even Haley, they're pushing Haley because, well, she's a more obvious choice for the Democrat and the Rhino neocon, exactly. But she's right now more popular than Ron.
I was quite
which it just
didn't take something to drop out, because I think that this is his perfect opportunity with the whole Trump disbarment from the ballot thing, the Supreme Court thing. DeSantis could just go, oof, I can leave, and just go, right, if you're gonna do Trump dirty like that, I'm dropping out in protest, basically. And it'd look better. It would actually save him slightly politically if he went, you know what, this is so bullshit, I'm dropping out the entire race and backing Trump, and just wave a Trump flag for the next 6 months.
That's all any of them had to do.
Yeah. The thing is
that's all any of them had to do.
That is, Vivek is here essentially saying that with the Colorado situation, where Colorado's used the 14th Amendment to try and say that Trump can't run. Now that's still appealable, but it may in fact hold, although it probably
needs
won't.
to be appealed.
It will probably reach the Supreme Court, and if they are not utter cowards like they were in 2020, then it should be overturned. But Vivek threatening to drop out over that shouldn't be necessary, according to the Colorado Republican Party, who say you won't have to, because we will withdraw from the primary as a party and convert to a pure caucus system if this is allowed to stand.
Well, then let's go. I mean, because obviously it's absurdist. They keep doing this. They always do this. They'll dig through some ancient law books and try to find some precedent in order to literally it's only over Trump. I've never seen this before. They'll dig through every kind of precedent to try and find some way to victimize Trump and keep him away from it, because they're terrified of him. The Democrats are absolutely terrified of this man, and that should be very telling how scared they are of him.
I have a very controversial take on all of this, which is the fact that I think this, because it's not going to work, this is not going to work. It clearly isn't going to work. The Supreme Court would shoot it down, and they can just do a pure caucus, like you said, and it really gets them to energize behind him. I quite honestly feel that this, whether intentionally or not, is a bolster. It is a big bolster to Trump.
It is.
And I think there's large parts of the American establishment that want Trump back, because Trump actually does steady the ship. He creates confidence, and he calms a lot of the elements.
And he's an enemy. He creates an enemy for the left to fight against.
Yes,
he's good for.
There may be something you haven't understood. You probably do, but just to make sure, this is not, Colorado's not just removing Trump from the primary. They're trying to make him ineligible to run for president in the state in total, even excluding write-ins. So the primary thing, in my opinion, was a side benefit, and they timed it for the day before they would have been too late to affect the primaries. So you got to wonder, maybe that was deliberate. Maybe it was procedural, but maybe it was intentional as well. You got to assume those things these days. And in which case, possibly what they were trying to do is get the Republican Party to say, oh, well, if Trump can't run in Colorado, then he's not a valid candidate. We're going to have to exclude him from the race. And, oh, look, just shove forward the safest candidate, which is going to be what the Democrats would prefer. Of course, what appears to have happened instead is they've just said, well, we'll just relinquish our entire support of your state in that case. Because another important thing we covered last time is that Colorado, at least in 2016, because in 2020, you can't trust that data at all because it was highly rigged everywhere. But in 2016, which was probably less rigged, it was blue. Not by a huge margin, but by enough. And so it probably wasn't going to go, or there's a fair chance it wasn't going to go Trump anyway. You know, you could flip it, but fair chance it wasn't going to go hit Trump anyway. So this doesn't actually make much difference. And Trump is still so far ahead, it would be so stupid not to run him. So what Vivek's doing here and what the Colorado Republicans are doing here makes sense.
However, if Colorado as a state says you cannot vote, so the GOP decides, yes, Trump is our candidate. This is who we're running. And the state of Colorado says, no, you cannot vote for Trump if you live in the state of Colorado. We're talking about significant and severe constitutional issues at this point. The Supreme Court will not.
Anyway.
Yeah, the Supreme Court cannot abide by that existing. You cannot have a state where it's illegal, or it's impossible to vote for one of the candidates for office. I mean, that just doesn't make any goddamn sense.
Well, that's the problem with the 14th Amendment.
I know they're citing a precedent there, but the precedent is totally invalid in this instance.
I think that is whoever is on the Colorado Supreme Court attempting to enhance their own careers. It's like it reminds me of like the weird Rwanda stuff in Britain, in that a lot of that stuff is never meant to go through the courts. This is never meant to pass a legal test.
Yes.
This is some activist kind of judge or legislator who is trying to bolster their own career.
Is it the Colorado version of who was the chick in New York?
Well, that doesn't help.
The judge in New York could try to do this as well.
The chick in New York.
Oh, but I know. I know what you mean. Though, but they keep doing this stuff. The left keeps doing this stuff where they will try and pass this legislation that they know is not actually going to pass. They only put it out in order to, or even if it passes, as it did in this case, that it won't hold up to any kind of scrutiny because it's bullshit. And it's just for attention. It's just for a fact because they don't have any real arguments. So that's what this is about.
It's probably just so that the Democrats can have ammunition to be able to say, look, he and start listing like court decisions where he's been impeached or in some way indicted. Is that, all of those were corrupt, though. All of those were set up by you lot, and none of them held. Even the ones that did weren't justified. The problem with this, make no mistake, is not necessarily that the part after you accept the 14th Amendment applies here. The problem is the 14th Amendment doesn't apply here, and the 14th Amendment itself probably, in my humble opinion, shouldn't exist in the first place.